Okay, the next thing is to cut the strip of timber that's going to run along the top of each of the sides here. Notice that with the backing plate, when I joined the two here, I've left 20 millimeters because I'm going to use a strip of 19 by, well, I'll cut it to about 1.5 centimeters or 15 mil. That will come in and that will sit flush there. Now this you can basically do a square piece of timber and then shape it as required, but what I'm going to do in this instance, as I have a saw table, I'm going to pre-cut it to an angle, and I will show you why that's relevant. Okay, so this piece of timber here I've cut to illustrate the angle that results at the sides of the outriggers. Now this is pretty consistent all the way along, except once it starts to get past the points of fixture, it starts to straighten out. So we're even still pretty accurate there, but as we get to the point, you can see it starts to straighten out here. There's a gap there. Similar with the end, as we move past these points here, you can see as we get close to the ends there, we start to see a bit of a gap. So this piece of timber, which the top of the outrigger is going to be glued onto, and which is then also glued to the strips, the side panels here, ideally this needs to be cut at this angle. Now I will, in the plans there will be a provided angle, more details, diagrams that you can utilize. I'm going to determine that right now on my table saw. The other option is you just simply put on a square piece, and when that is assembled, you'll then plane this back here. So that's just a little bit more work, but is equally possible. I'm going to leverage my table saw to start with this, and then just at the ends I'm going to flatten it out a little bit. Okay, this is my table saw. As you can see, I've got it on the right angle there, and that is 14 degrees. Oh, sorry, 10, 11, 12 degrees. So let's lock that in there, and we'll now cut a strip. Okay, here is my first side panel. I'm going to run this down towards the back because it's fairly straight at the back, and that's an easy place for me to do the scarfing of the two joints here. Rather than actually pre-join them, I'm just going to pre-cut this scarfed angle here, and then do a similar angle on the other one from the underneath, so I can just overlap. So I'll glue this first one on by screwing through from the other side, and I'm going to use a bunch of little squares of plywood to do that. Just these nice thin little 4-gauge screws. And as I come up towards the front here, instead of just aligning this perfectly, I'm going to raise it up a little bit so that I'll be able to then plane down to a more square profile where it starts to straighten out and become a flat angle as it meets at the front here. I will also, I think once I've got this glued on, that's when I'll then work out what this angle is going to be, where I need to join the two front pieces. I was just about to cut the second one of these, as you can see I've marked it out here, when I realized that I actually had this sheet lying down on the wrong side. So now I've got them, as you can see, on opposing sides here. So that's kind of, if you flip this one over, that's how they would meet. And when I put the angle at the top here where it needs to be, then this is the wrong end. So I actually need to mark out that scarf down this end. So just be aware of that. And there's my first one that I have cut there. I'm using this little tiny handsaw here, which enables me to get a good straight cut and to do these sort of finer little jobs. Okay, I glued on these bits of timber overnight, which are going to be the point onto which we glue the top of the armours, the outriggers. And as you can see, I've just put on these little squares here just to prevent the screws from doing too much, creating too big a hole in the sides. You'll still end up with a small hole, but this enables them to sort of clamp the timber together. If you have enough clamps, then yeah, you can use that, but I do not, as many people don't. And you can see in some cases I've used baking paper here just to where I was getting a little bit too much epoxy all over the place, because you don't want these to end up glued on. So let's see how I go removing these screws. Note also how I made it a little bit proud at the front here, where essentially we're going to level that off and it's going to become a bit more square, as I discussed earlier, and did a similar thing at the end. All of those little backing blocks removed easily, and you can see they only leave relatively small holes in the timber here that are easy to cover up. Here's the points where I scarfed those two together. I used some thickened epoxy to make the joint a bit, because there's a few gaps there and that sort of thing, so I used the thickened epoxy to essentially make the joint stronger, but it's not so much a matter of providing structural strength here. This is more about just giving us something to screw into to build the shape of the outriggers. Next task is to mark out where our bulkheads are going to go in. One of them is going to go at this point here where the joint is. Another will go halfway, and then another will go at a point up the front here. And essentially the two at either end there act as the point where we're going to be screwing in the supports, which will be used to attach the outriggers, the armours, to the arcers. Here's the exciting point where we're about to move from 2D to 3D outriggers.